Don't you think that's a bit fast? We've heard that quite a lot over the last few years. So, my current tutoring company, in our first year, dipping our toes into the potential arena, we sampled 4 students just to see if we could come up with a method that is feasible, gets decent results, people like it, like super beta trial run. We then went more into it with just me and my partner Millie, and we did 100 students the year after that. And then the goal from there was 3,000 students. So the response to that, a lot, was, that's quite a lot, isn't it? That's a big jump. Do you not think that's a bit too fast? Oh, that's big, isn't it? And all the way through my entrepreneurial journey, everyone says slow down, think smaller. And I was trying to think why. And this is where my thoughts for the day have come from. I think it comes down to when people mean fast, that actually means they're really saying that sounds a bit too big of a goal rather than fast. Because like inherently, what's wrong with speed? Now, if you think about like driving a car, what's wrong with speed? If you're on a completely open road, or like imagine you're out in space, speed has no problem. Like you cannot even tell the speed that you travel. You can tell acceleration because that creates a force. The problem is if you hit something, when you move quickly, you accelerate much harder, like you decelerate. If you hit a brick wall moving quickly, it hurts more than if you're just walking. Like run into a wall or walk into a wall. What's going to hurt more? Running. And that's the difficulty when people say that's a bit big or that's a bit fast. What they really mean is, I don't have the risk tolerance to do that. And that's okay. But similarly, what they haven't weighed up is the risk of inaction. And so here's a fun one. Every year you don't have the skill of making £1 million a year, as an example. Let's say you earn on the average amount in the UK, 30 grand. Every year it costs you, that ignorance costs you £970,000. So there is a massive, big risk on time. The longer you take, the less opportunity you have for your results and skills to compound, which is why wealth, generational wealth, started when your great-great-great-grandparents invested and you've been given a pot of money that was growing 10% a year, and now it's bigger than any of your family could spend, even if they try to spend everything. That's when you have a snowball so big that it adds more than you could physically take away from it. Compounding. If you don't know about compounding, Einstein said it's the 8th wonder of the world, and it's something that we teach to basic 14 to 16-year-olds. And by not acting, you lose the growth that compounding gives you. And if you do the maths on like your pension pot or what you're going to be left with when you retire, you make like half of your wealth in the final 5%-ish to 10% of your leading up to retirement, because that's where the money's compounding. And so the earlier you can take bigger swings, the more impact it has later. I'll give you a really simple example of this for you. COVID spread exponentially, is the word that gives you compound growth, exponentially. And it was something silly like if there were hand washes, or like half the people washed their hands coming off of those first aeroplanes where it was first spread, like the number of fatalities would be like 1% as to what they were, or something like that. It's ridiculous that the very earliest points make the biggest difference later on because of like the butterfly effect, or whatever you want to call it, right? So what's really the problem with moving fast? It comes down to risk. Because what happens is when you move quickly, or you move big, you win big. And I've talked about this many times about like business is about playing on multipliers. And when you do things big, you are more likely to, when you fail, that the fail is bigger too. And so I was thinking of the exact situation of when we hired our when we did the last hiring round in April 2025, it's now end of August 2025, we were hiring 10 guys and girls, and we figured out a system where they should be getting in the region of 10 to 15 closes a week. That's what we had been getting on average from all of our 15 sales guys before them for the last 7 or 8 months. We were like, great, if we fix this one thing and give them a better onboarding and give them more support, that should be fine. And then all of a sudden, we'd be getting 150 students per week. It doesn't give you much context unless you know where we were at before, right? Which is, throughout the year, we've averaged 20. And so 150 students a week, times it by roughly 4, 600 students a month, 600 times an LTV of, let's just say roughly 600. That is 600 by 600 is 360,000. Let me just quickly do that. 600 by 600 by 6 would be 3,600. And then, 300 and 360000. So 360,000. Yeah, bang on. Hey, math tutor. It's very late. Sorry for that. 360k a month. Times that by 12, roughly by 10, 3.5 million a year, 4 million a year pounds. So like 5 million a year dollars, however you want to translate it. That was the possible big swing. It's like, great, we crack this works, we're now at a run rate of 5 mil a year. Brilliant. Halfway to 8 figures. Fantastic. And it didn't work. And the cost was £100,000 overall. And so would you take that trade? Would you take a trade for 5 mil a year with what I was saying odds of it working were 6, probably 2/3 likely to work, 1/3 likely to fail, and we rolled and we didn't pay off. But would you make that? Was that a bet you'd make? $100,000 bet for 5 mil? I was. And I think that level of risk tolerance is what makes entrepreneurs special, because it's not necessarily gambling when you have the skills to back it up. And this wasn't the first time we'd done it. We had a much better chance of succeeding than the time before. And that's where people get scared. It's how much risk are you willing to take, and the fact that people have loss aversion. And in the human psyche, on average, people will feel the weight of loss 8 times more than gain. Veritasium does a great video on this, going around literally explaining to someone, be like, let's heads or tails, flip a coin. If you win, I'll give you 10. If I win, you give me 10. Literally everybody said no. Went up to like, okay, if you win, I'll give you 20. If I win, you give me 10. Yeah, great. And then eventually stacked this all up, and it was like, okay, if you win, I'll give you 80. If I win, you give me 10. And it's still a 50-50. Well, if you just run the numbers on that, 50-50, and it's like you either +8 or -1, you'd play that on repeat. And so, like, of course, that's where loss aversion comes from, of like, but most normal people, when they find something like that in their life, they don't spam the button, but entrepreneurs do. And that requires a tolerance of risk. So, I've gone on a really long roundabout thing here, and I haven't really got my thoughts out of what I was thinking here, but I think it comes down to your willingness to take risk. And I say, don't gamble. Really don't gamble. Have everything tracked and measured, and know your conversion rates, and know the likelihood of this being able to scale. And if you've done it before, that increases your odds. But if it's your first time, it's probably going to fail. And so maybe do it on a smaller scale, and that's totally fine. So yeah, those are my thoughts for the day. And what's the last thing I wanted to point out? Well, I was like, we're going that back now to the safe option, which is the smoothest way to scale any business. It's not the fastest, and it will cost you a lot of money if you would have gotten it right the first time. But you get very, very good at a system, you increase its leverage, so you get more output for the same input, and then you replace that cog in the system so that you can focus on even more leveraged work. So as an example, in our sales system, If closing is the highest skill thing where you make the most money, but you need to have appointments set, well, you could replace the appointment setting until someone matches your appointment setting, which we've done before, so that all of your time is focused on just the closing. And for me, that takes up about a fifth to a third, so like 20 to 30% of the job, which we could then remove and then fill in with the higher stuff. So I could pay someone for 20 to 30% of my time back. I might pay them 50 quid a day, but that might allow me to take 2 more calls in the day, or let's just say 1 call a day. And on average, in 1 call, I take £100. I've doubled my money, right? And that's what increasing leverage is. There you go. So, risk, should you take it? Speed, should you act fast? And should you dream big? And I think so, honestly. The scars are real, you'll live with them, but the best time to lose everything is when you have nothing and no dependence. And the earlier you take the swings, the more likely you are to have massive returns on the back end later in life, if that's what you're going for. All right, that's the end of my rant for today. Have a great one, guys. Peace.